The night Hollywood felt something was different. From the very first moment, the bright lights of the Hotstar premiere event touched the long red carpet. People inside Hollywood felt something unusual moving in the air, something they could not name, but they could definitely sense. It was a strange mix of excitement, curiosity, and unspoken tension that made the whole place feel alive in a way that no other premiere night had felt before. Even the photographers, who were usually busy checking their camera settings and shouting at each other to get better angles, kept glancing at the entrance gate as if they were waiting for something they didn't fully understand. And the guests walking the carpet kept whispering to one another because every person had heard the same rumor, the rumor that tonight something big would finally come out, something connected to Keanu and Sandra, something that had followed them for years like a shadow Hollywood kept trying to expose but never could. No one knew whether tonight would bring clarity or more confusion, but everyone knew that something was going to change. Sandra arrived first, stepping out of a black SUV with a soft smile that did not match the noise inside her chest. She looked calm, graceful, humble, and yet anyone who truly knew her could see the heaviness she carried in the way she held her hands together, as if trying to keep something from slipping out. The crowd cheered her name, calling out with admiration and warmth, because Sandra had always been the kind of person people respected. She was kind to everyone, from her co-stars to the staff that worked behind the scenes. She never acted superior, never demanded special treatment, and never let fame turn her heart into something cold. But tonight she knew she was stepping into a storm she wasn't prepared for, because the rumor wasn't just about her relationship with Keanu. It was about something deeper, something hidden for years, something she never imagined would be revealed on a night meant for celebration. As she walked along the carpet, she kept her smile steady, greeting fans, waving softly, taking pictures, and answering questions with her usual gentle voice, even though inside she was rehearsing every possible outcome of the night. She knew attention would double the moment Keanu arrived. She knew questions would come, questions she never felt ready to answer. She knew cameras would shift toward her face, waiting to catch the smallest change in her expression. And she also knew she could not run anymore, not from this, not from the truth she had tried to protect for so many years. Inside the venue, Keanu sat quietly in a black car that had just stopped at the entrance. He hadn't stepped out yet, even though the security team was already opening his door. He held a small piece of folded paper in his hands, running his thumb across the edge with a slow, heavy motion that carried a deep kind of sadness. His eyes were soft, thoughtful, and conflicted. He looked like a man trying to gather strength that had been taken from him long ago. He had always been admired for his calm nature, his humility, his gentle heart, and the way he carried kindness like a responsibility he never wanted to fail. But tonight, he felt more vulnerable than he ever allowed himself to be, because he knew tonight might force him to reveal something he had protected with every part of his soul. The folded paper was something he had carried with him for years. It held words he wrote for Sandra during one of the hardest periods of his life. Words he thought he would never need to show her, words that came from a night when everything inside him felt broken. He kept it not as a memory of pain, but as a reminder of how much she had unknowingly saved him. He never gave her the letter because he believed she deserved someone stronger, someone who didn't carry so many scars, someone who could offer her a life without unspoken darkness. But the world kept pushing, Hollywood kept speculating, fans kept connecting dots, and destiny kept pulling them together in ways neither could ignore. And tonight he felt the truth breathing against his neck, waiting to be released. When Keanu finally stepped out of the car, the crowd erupted. The photographers nearly fell over one another. Fans screamed louder than they had for any actor that night. Everyone felt that something was about to happen. Keanu took a slow breath, blinking against the flood of lights, and began walking down the red carpet with quiet confidence, even though his heartbeat was uneven under his calm exterior. He greeted everyone with respect, nodding gently, bowing slightly to show appreciation, and smiling in that humble way that made people feel seen. He never rushed. He never acted like the attention belonged to him. He moved like a man grateful for every second he had been given. Yet every step pulled him closer to Sandra, and the closer he got, the heavier his chest became. Sandra turned the moment she heard the crowd shift. Her eyes searched the entrance, and when she saw him walking toward her, something inside her softened and trembled at the same time. There was history in that look, history that stretched far beyond what the cameras had ever captured. They had shared moments of laughter, shared pain, shared dreams, shared fears, and shared silence that was deeper than spoken conversations. The world saw chemistry, but the truth was more complicated and more fragile than anyone outside their hearts could ever understand. They stood in front of each other now, surrounded by cameras and noise, but for a brief moment it felt like everything else faded away. They exchanged a soft smile, one that carried years of connection, years of unspoken truth, and years of questions they both avoided. The reporters moved closer. Microphones rose, flashes intensified, every person leaned in. Something about their energy told the entire world that tonight was different. Sandra spoke first, her voice low enough for only Keanu to hear. She said his name gently, but her eyes showed the fear she was trying to hide. He nodded once, as if telling her he knew what she felt and he understood. Before they could take another step, a reporter shouted the first question that changed the atmosphere instantly. It cut through the noise like a blade. "Keanu, is it true that you and Sandra have been hiding something from the industry for years?" The carpet fell silent. Fans leaned forward. Photographers froze. Sandra's breath caught. Keanu looked up, his expression unreadable but filled with something heavy. The reporter wasn't done. He added another question that made the entire event feel electric. "There are rumors about a hidden truth connected to both of you, something that might change the way Hollywood sees you. Will you confirm anything tonight?" Sandra felt her heart race because she knew the questions would eventually reach the topic she feared most. But she had hoped it would happen later, not now, not when she was already struggling to keep her emotions steady. Keanu slowly exhaled. He didn't answer immediately. He glanced at Sandra with a quiet, protective look, the kind of look that said he would stand in front of any storm if it meant sheltering her. But he also knew the storm had already started. And then things became even more complicated. Because from the far side of the carpet, a voice rose above the crowd, a voice they both recognized. It was the producer of the film they were premiering, waving urgently, signaling them to come inside because something unexpected had happened backstage. Keanu and Sandra exchanged another glance. And Sandra whispered, "What now?" Keanu shook his head slowly, "I don't know." But the heaviness in his voice revealed that he feared the truth was about to break open much sooner than either of them planned. They stepped inside the venue, moving away from the crowd, and the moment the doors closed behind them, the noise softened but the tension grew even stronger. The producer rushed toward them, looking stressed, holding a tablet tightly in his hands. "You two need to see this," he said, his voice tense. Keanu and Sandra leaned closer. The producer played a video clip, and the very first frame made Sandra's knees weaken as she grabbed the wall for support. Keanu's face changed, his calm expression cracking for the first time that night. The video was something neither of them expected to see at the premiere. It was something from their past, something private, something recorded years ago but never shown to the world. Something that could change everything tonight. The screen froze at the most painful moment. Keanu whispered, almost inaudible, "How did they get this?" Sandra swallowed hard, tears forming in her eyes. Because the clip revealed the first piece of the hidden truth Hollywood had never known. And that truth was about to go public in a way neither of them could stop. The producer looked at them and said, "This will play during the event unless we replace it. We have minutes." Keanu turned to Sandra, his voice shaking softly. "We have to decide right now. Do we hide it again, or do we finally tell the truth?" Sandra closed her eyes, holding tears that threatened to fall. And with that, the cliffhanger settled like a storm inside the premiere hall, the video that reopened every hidden wound. The moment the producer walked away to give them a few minutes to breathe, Keanu and Sandra stood frozen in the quiet hallway of the premiere venue. The muffled echo of the crowd outside felt distant, almost unreal, as if they had stepped out of time itself. Everything inside that hallway felt heavier than the air outside, heavier than the bright lights, heavier than the noise of Hollywood trying to taste the truth. Sandra pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her breath tremble against her palm, because seeing that video again felt like watching a wound reopen that she had spent years trying to heal. Keanu stood still, shoulders low, jaw tight, his fingers curling into a fist at his side, not because he was angry at the world, but because he was angry at himself for not protecting her from this moment sooner. The tablet still displayed the frozen frame of the video, and even though neither of them wanted to look at it again, they couldn't tear their eyes away. The frame showed a moment from a night that was never meant to be recorded. It was raw, emotional, and private, a moment when Sandra had broken down in front of Keanu, and he had held her while she cried about something the world never knew she carried. The video didn't reveal the full story, not the reasons, not the meaning, not the truth behind her tears. But it showed enough emotion to make the entire world speculate, misunderstand, twist, and create narratives that would hurt her heart in ways she had been running from for years. Sandra whispered, her voice shaking so softly Keanu almost didn't hear it. "I thought that night was safe. I thought we were alone." Keanu shook his head slowly, still staring at the screen. We were. We were supposed to be. Someone must have, I don't know, maybe a security camera, maybe someone passing by with a phone, maybe someone who saw an opportunity." Sandra closed her eyes and leaned back against the wall as if her strength was slipping through the cracks of her fingers. "I can't believe this is happening tonight. Not here. Not like this." Keanu moved closer, reaching out gently but stopping just before touching her, because he knew Sandra valued having space to breathe when her emotions were spinning. He let his voice soften even more, lowering it until it felt like a whisper only meant for her heart. "Sandra, I'm here. We'll figure this out. I won't let you face this alone." Her eyes opened slowly, and the first tear escaped down her cheek, not from weakness but from the exhaustion of carrying a truth she refused to let the world judge. "Keanu, if this plays, they will think something happened between us that didn't, or they will think something didn't happen that did. They will twist it in ways we can't control." Keanu nodded and looked down for a moment, feeling the weight of the years they had spent protecting something that mattered deeply to both of them. "I know, but maybe the truth wouldn't hurt as much anymore." Sandra shook her head quickly, her voice trembling. "You don't know that. The truth can ruin things. It can change how people look at us. It can destroy peace. It can open wounds we've worked so hard to close." He looked at her with gentle sadness. "And hiding it has also destroyed parts of us, hasn't it?" Sandra looked away, unable to deny it. There were memories that never healed, conversations they avoided, emotions buried so deep they sometimes forgot why they hurt. But tonight the truth was pushing upward again, demanding to be seen. Keanu exhaled deeply and finally gave her the question he had been afraid to ask. "Sandra, do you regret that night?" Sandra's head snapped up, her eyes wide with surprise. For years she had feared he would ask because she didn't know how to answer without hurting him or herself. "No," she whispered quickly, almost desperately. "Never." His eyes softened, as if a quiet ache inside him finally relaxed. "Then why are we still hiding everything?" She wanted to answer. She wanted to let herself fall into honesty. But they were still standing in a hallway filled with tension, still minutes away from a premiere, still surrounded by an industry ready to pick apart every expression on their faces. So instead she said the one thing she felt sure about. Because the truth is complicated, and the world doesn't understand complicated. Keanu gave a small, sad smile. "You're right, they don't." But before their conversation could go deeper, a staff member approached them quickly with a nervous expression. "Keanu, Sandra, they need you both in the backstage room right now. There's been another development." Sandra felt her stomach drop. "Another what now?" The staff member swallowed, glancing at the tablet still showing the frozen frame. "The team found something. It's not just one video." Keanu straightened. "What do you mean?" "There are more clips, different angles, different moments. Someone was collecting them." Sandra's hand covered her mouth as fear rushed through her. "Why? Who would do that?" The staff member didn't know. "We're still trying to find out, but the system started syncing a backup file, and the clips were inside. The event's pre-show video editor says someone sent them anonymously weeks ago, with instructions to include them tonight." Keanu stepped forward, tense for the first time. "Weeks ago, and no one said anything." The sender used a fake identity. The email looked official. The clips were labeled as behind-the-scenes emotional moments from your early work together. The team assumed it was approved by your management. Sandra shook her head, voice cracking. "No one approved this, no one." The staff member nodded, flustered. "We know that now, but the event is already running. The system is prepared to autoplay unless we stop it manually, and the control room says there's a problem. The file is locked with a timed execution. Unless someone overrides it, the clip will appear on the main screen during the tribute presentation." Keanu rubbed his forehead, frustration and concern tightening his muscles. Why would someone want to expose this? What do they gain? The staff member hesitated. They didn't attach a name, but they attached a note. Sandra froze. A note. Yes, the staff member said, pulling a folded printout from his pocket and handing it to Keanu. The editor found it inside the submission folder. Keanu unfolded it slowly. One line. One sentence. No signature. But the words cut deeper than any truth they had ever hidden. The world deserves to know what really happened between you two. Sandra's breath broke. No, no, this is personal. Someone is trying to force us. Keanu folded the note carefully, his jaw tight, his breath slow, his eyes filled with protective anger. Sandra, listen to me. Whoever did this thinks they can control our story. They think they can expose something we never gave them permission to touch. But they don't get to decide our truth. We do. She felt tears rising again, but fought them back. Keanu, what if this ruins everything? What if this hurts my family? What if people misunderstand? What if? He stepped forward and gently placed his hands on her shoulders, not tightly but with a steady warmth that grounded her like a quiet anchor. Sandra, you have spent your whole life being strong for everyone. You have carried silence to protect people who never even knew you were protecting them. You have lived with pressure that would have destroyed most people. But you are still here. You are still standing. You are more resilient than you think. Her eyes filled again. And what about you? You always protect me, but who protects you? He gave a small, tired smile. I don't need much. I just need the truth to stop hurting the people I care about. She lowered her gaze, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his voice. But then another voice echoed from the hallway. Keanu, Sandra, the director needs you backstage now. We have less than 10 minutes. They followed the staff member through narrow corridors until they reached a small room filled with screens, cables, technicians, and stressed faces. Everyone looked up when the two actors walked in, as if their presence held the weight of the entire situation. The director approached them, visibly conflicted. We can try to override the file manually, but there's a high risk it will glitch on the main screen. If that happens, the footage might flash anyway. Sandra felt panic rising. So we have no control. The director hesitated. Not unless you decide to address it yourself before the clip appears. Keanu exchanged a look with Sandra, a look filled with silent understanding and fear and courage. You mean, tell the truth on stage? The director nodded. Yes, that's the only way to take back control. If you tell your story in your own words, the footage loses its power. Sandra felt the room spinning slightly. I don't know if I can do that. I don't even know where to begin. Keanu stepped closer to her again, lowering his voice. You won't be alone. She met his eyes, searching for reassurance, and found it there. But before she could answer, an assistant rushed into the room, holding a headset and looking pale. We have a situation, the assistant said. Everyone turned. The assistant swallowed and continued. Someone in the audience is live streaming. They somehow got access to the leaked clips, and they're showing them online right now. Sandra felt her breath vanish. Keanu felt his chest tighten. The director cursed under his breath. How many viewers? The assistant checked the screen. Over 800,000 and rising. Sandra pressed a hand to her forehead, whispering, This is spiraling out of control. Keanu looked at the director with determination. How long until we go on stage? 5 minutes, the director replied. Sandra looked at Keanu with trembling eyes. Keanu, what do we do? He didn't answer right away. He looked at her gently, thoughtfully, painfully. And then he said something that changed the energy of the entire room. Maybe it's time we stop running. Sandra stared at him, feeling both fear and relief in her chest. And if the truth destroys us? Keanu shook his head slowly. Or maybe it saves us. And as the countdown reached 4 minutes, the lights outside shifted. The crowd inside grew louder, and the stage manager called their names. The moment they stepped toward the stage entrance, a technician rushed toward them with panic in his eyes. Keanu, Sandra, something happened. The clip, it didn't wait. Keanu froze. What? The video started playing early, the technician said breathlessly. It's on the main screen right now. The audience is watching it. Sandra felt her knees weaken again. Keanu caught her arm to steady her. And the technician added, voice trembling. And that's not all. The clip didn't start from the emotional part. It started from the argument you both tried to forget. Sandra's eyes widened in horror. No, not that night, please not that night. The technician nodded helplessly. It's playing for everyone. Keanu squeezed her arm gently. And then the doors to the stage burst open with a bright flood of light. The crowd inside was already reacting. Everything was already changing. And neither of them had even spoken a word yet. The night the past refused to stay buried. The moment Sandra heard the technician say that the clip had started from the argument, her entire body reacted before her mind even fully understood. Her legs felt weak, her stomach tightened, and a cold rush moved through her chest like a wave that stole the air from her lungs. She had spent years burying the memory of that night, years convincing herself the world would never know about it, years believing that the pain she felt back then would remain hers alone. She never imagined that night would be played in front of an audience filled with actors, journalists, critics, and millions watching from their screens. She never imagined the most vulnerable moment of her friendship with Keanu would be the one the world saw first. Keanu stepped closer, lowering his voice until only she could hear him. His tone was steady, even though she could see worry in his eyes. "Sandra, breathe, I'm right here." She nodded weakly, but her breath still came out uneven and trembling. She wasn't afraid of being judged by Hollywood. She was afraid of reliving something that had once shattered her heart in ways she never talked about, not even to herself. The hallway behind them vibrated with the echo of the audience's reaction. There were gasps, murmurs, whispers rising and falling like a storm building inside the auditorium. Every second the video played pushed them closer to a truth they had hidden for too long. Sandra pressed her hand against the wall to steady herself. Her mind flashed back to the memory, the moment the argument happened, the moment their friendship nearly broke. She had never forgotten the look on Keanu's face that night, a look filled with pain and guilt, and something she didn't understand until much later. And now the world was watching it, stripped of context, stripped of the emotions behind it, stripped of the truth that made that night so complicated. Keanu turned sharply to the technician. "How much has played?" The technician swallowed. "Almost a minute. The audience is completely silent. They're seeing everything, your voices, the tension, the moment she cried, the moment you walked away, and—" Sandra flinched before he could finish. "Stop, please don't say more." Keanu immediately placed a hand on her back, just enough to comfort her without crowding her. "We need to see what they're seeing," he said softly. She looked up at him with fear in her eyes. "Keanu, I don't know if I can watch it again." He nodded with gentle understanding. "Then you don't have to. I'll watch it. I just need to know how much they've seen so we can choose our next step." The technician handed him a backup monitor with shaking hands. Keanu took it carefully, his expression tightening as he watched the clip play. Through the faint audio, Sandra could hear bits of their younger voices, tired, emotional, scared. Her heart pounded louder than the sounds coming from the device. She looked away, unable to face the image she knew too well. Inside the clip, younger Sandra was crying, her voice breaking as she said, "Why didn't you tell me the truth back then? Why did you let me feel alone?" And younger Keanu responded with a pained, trembling voice, "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought hiding it would protect you." The audience inside gasped again. Keanu paused the clip and turned off the monitor, breathing slowly as if he needed to steady himself. He looked at Sandra with soft eyes full of regret. "They've seen the beginning, the worst part, not the ending." Sandra's throat felt tight. "So they think we, what? Fought because of something romantic, because of something personal, because of something we didn't want them to know." Keanu nodded. "They think we were hiding a relationship or a heartbreak or something darker." Sandra lifted her trembling hand to her face. "And we can't explain without telling the whole truth." Keanu stepped closer until their foreheads almost touched. "Maybe the truth is the only way out now." She closed her eyes. "Keanu, that night nearly destroyed me. I don't want the world to talk about it like it was some scandal. It wasn't scandal, it was pain, real pain." "I know," he whispered. Their moment was interrupted by the director rushing back into the hallway, his voice tense and urgent. "The clip is still playing. The audience is reacting. Some people have started recording it on their phones. We need to get ahead of this right now." Sandra opened her eyes, tears forming again. "If we go out there, what do we say? What do we even start with?" Keanu looked down, thinking deeply. After several long seconds, he said, "We start with the truth, not everything. not the details you're not ready to share, but the truth about why that night mattered, the truth about how it changed us. The director added, "You have maybe 2 minutes before the autoplay ends and the tribute script resumes. If you two don't take control of the narrative now, Hollywood will twist this into something it is." Sandra felt her chest tighten. "I don't want lies about us trending everywhere." Keanu nodded. "Then let me speak first. I'll explain the context without revealing what you don't want revealed. I'll take the responsibility. You don't have to say anything if you're not ready." Sandra stared at him with disbelief. "You always try to protect me, even when it hurts you." He smiled softly. "That's not protection, that's care." Her eyes softened, but before she could say anything more, the assistant with the headset rushed in again. The clip just reached the part where Sandra collapses onto the chair and Keanu kneels in front of her. The audience is reacting emotionally. Some people are crying, some people look confused, some journalists already started typing. Sandra felt heat rising to her face. "Oh God." Keanu squeezed her hand gently. "Stay with me, we'll handle this." The stage manager shouted from the doorway, "We need to go now. The moment the clip ends, the spotlight will hit center stage. You must already be there." Sandra hesitated. Fear clenched her chest. Her breathing became uneven again. And then Keanu extended his hand, palm open, offering her a choice, not demanding a decision. She looked at his hand, trembling slightly, and then back into his eyes. His voice softened to a whisper, "You don't have to walk through this alone." She placed her hand in his, and everything inside her shifted. As they walked toward the stage entrance together, Sandra felt a mixture of dread and strength battling inside her. The dread came from the fear of being exposed, misunderstood, judged. The strength came from the quiet presence beside her, a presence she trusted more deeply than she had ever admitted. The doors to the stage area opened. The bright lights hit their faces instantly, blinding them for a moment. The huge screen behind them continued playing the leaked clip. Younger Sandra was shown crying into her hands while younger Keanu knelt in front of her, begging her to listen, begging for forgiveness, begging for honesty. The audience was completely silent. Every seat filled. Every eye locked on the screen. Every breath held. Keanu gently guided Sandra toward the center of the stage. The floor felt shaky beneath her, not because it was unstable, but because her heart was pounding so loudly she could barely hear anything else. The screen reached the final seconds of the clip. Younger Sandra whispered something the microphone barely caught. "I just needed you to trust me." Younger Keanu whispered back, "I trusted you more than anyone, that was the problem." And then the clip faded to black. The room didn't breathe. Not until the spotlight hit Keanu and Sandra. The audience gasped collectively when they realized the two were standing there, visible, vulnerable, and silent. Sandra felt countless eyes watching every twitch of her face, every movement of her hands, every breath she took. She swallowed hard, her throat dry, her voice trapped inside her chest. Keanu stepped forward slightly, still holding her hand behind their bodies so only she could feel the quiet reassurance. He lifted the microphone, and Sandra squeezed his fingers tightly, silently telling him she trusted him to speak first. Keanu breathed slowly, grounding himself, and then he spoke in a calm, quiet voice that carried across the silent theater. "What you just saw was real. It was a moment from our past. It was a moment of pain, of misunderstanding, of truth that neither of us were ready for back then." The audience leaned forward. Reporters raised their phones. Some people held their breath. Keanu continued, his voice steady but emotional. "But what you saw was also incomplete. It was the beginning of something that changed our lives. It was not a scandal. It was not a secret relationship. It was not something Hollywood ever had the right to twist." Sandra felt tears burning her eyes, but she stood tall, letting Keanu speak with honesty she had feared for years. "That night," Keanu continued, "was not about romance. It was about something deeper, something personal, something that shaped the way we trust, the way we heal, the way we protect each other. And we chose to keep it private not because we wanted to hide anything from the world, but because some emotions are not meant to be consumed by the public." The audience remained silent but emotional. Sandra finally took a small step forward, her voice trembling but clear enough to carry. That night was one of the hardest moments of my life, and Keanu was there. He stayed. He supported me. He helped me in ways I can't even explain, and I didn't want anyone to use that pain as entertainment." Her voice cracked, and the audience reacted with a soft ripple of empathy. Keanu lowered his head respectfully, letting her breathe through the moment. But before she could continue, something unexpected happened. A shadow moved behind the audience. Someone stood up. A man, holding a phone, broadcasting, and he shouted loudly enough for the entire room to hear. "Tell them the real truth. Tell them what you two were hiding all those years. Tell them why you fought that night." Security rushed toward him, but he stepped back quickly, avoiding them. The audience turned. Sandra froze. Keanu felt his chest tighten again. The man's voice cut through the theater like a blade. "Tell them about the promise you both made that night, the promise you never kept." Sandra's face went pale. Keanu felt his hand tremble for the first time. The man pointed at them and shouted, "Tell them why you swore to never let the world know what really happened after that argument." The entire theater erupted into gasps. Phones went up everywhere. Questions exploded from every direction. Sandra felt her breath slip away. Keanu's eyes widened. Because the man had revealed something no one else knew. Something they thought was buried deep and forgotten. Something they never expected to hear tonight. And then the man shouted one final line before security finally reached him. "Tell them about the night you both disappeared together, and why neither of you spoke about it again." The room erupted. Sandra's legs buckled. Keanu caught her before she fell. And the spotlight burned brighter as the audience demanded answers, the promise that refused to stay silent. The moment Sandra felt her knees weaken and Keanu caught her before she fell, the entire theater shifted into a strange, breathless stillness. It was as if the world had paused to watch two people standing in the brightest spotlight of their lives, forced to confront a night they both thought they had successfully buried. Sandra felt the warmth of Keanu's hand steadying her, his grip firm but gentle, telling her through touch that she was not alone, even as thousands of eyes waited for them to speak. Her heart was pounding so loudly she felt it shaking her ribs, and her breath seemed to fade in and out like a flickering candle. The guards finally reached the man who had shouted the accusation. He struggled for a moment, almost desperate, yelling even as they pulled him toward the exit. "Tell them the truth. Tell them about the night you both disappeared. They deserve to know." His voice echoed through the entire hall until the doors slammed shut behind him, leaving a heavy silence hanging in the air. Sandra felt a long shiver move through her because she knew the exact night he was talking about. She knew the memory he was trying to expose. She knew the promise he had mentioned. And she knew that the truth behind that promise was not something simple or shallow. It wasn't gossip. It wasn't scandal. It wasn't something the world could understand easily. It was personal in the deepest way possible, and it had marked both her life and Keanu's in ways neither had spoken about openly. Keanu's voice whispered near her ear, soft and grounding. "Look at me, just breathe." She lifted her eyes slowly, meeting his steady gaze. His eyes were calm but intense, filled with determination and quiet sorrow, telling her he was ready to face whatever came next, even if she was. His hand slid down her arm, giving her a subtle squeeze, the kind of touch that reminded her they had walked through storms before and survived. But this storm felt different. This storm had teeth. The audience waited. The cameras pointed. The whispers grew louder, rolling through the room like distant thunder. Every person inside the venue felt they were standing at the edge of a revelation, something that could rewrite Hollywood's understanding of Keanu and Sandra forever. Sandra forced herself to stand upright again, feeling her legs tremble beneath the weight of the past. She took a slow breath and looked out into the sea of faces, trying to gather strength from the silence, even though the silence felt colder than she expected. "That night," she began softly, her voice shaking but audible, "was never supposed to be part of the public." Keanu glanced sideways at her, surprised she was speaking at all. He had expected her to let him handle everything. But she understood something. If she didn't speak now, the world would twist the truth into something completely unrecognizable. She continued, "That night was not something we shared with anyone, not because we wanted to hide from the world, but because it was painful, and it changed both of us." She paused, her eyes stinging as memories flooded her mind, memories of fear, confusion, and a connection that deepened in ways neither of them understood back then. Keanu stepped forward slightly, raising the microphone as if to stand beside her with words that would support her story. We disappeared that night because we needed to. Because we were dealing with something that was too heavy for cameras, too personal for interviews, too raw for Hollywood. He glanced at Sandra with gentle honesty. And we made a promise that we would never speak about it unless we both agreed. The audience leaned forward, mesmerized, wanting to know more, wishing to understand the fragments of truth unfolding in front of them. Sandra wrung her hands together, remembering the moment of that promise, the way her voice trembled when she swore she would never reveal what had happened because she feared it would reopen wounds she had spent years trying to close. A reporter from the front row stood, breaking the fragile silence. "What happened that night?" she asked boldly, her voice echoing through the hall. Sandra's shoulders stiffened. Keanu's jaw tightened. The question vibrated through the room, heavy and intrusive, demanding an answer neither of them were ready to give. Keanu spoke first, his voice steady but carrying the weight of years. "That night was about loss, not between us but around us. It was a night where life felt fragile, where trust felt uncertain, where we both realized how human we really were." He paused, letting the truth settle without revealing too much. "It was a moment that forced us to grow in ways neither of us expected." The audience listened, but the hunger for more details remained. Sandra felt her breath quicken again. She could almost hear the world outside preparing headlines, twisting meanings, filling in blanks with their own imagination. She wanted to stop them, but she also wanted to protect what little privacy she had left. Another journalist raised a hand and shouted, "Was there a relationship? Were you together that night?" Sandra flinched at the question. She stepped back instinctively, but Keanu stepped closer to her, almost protectively. "No," he said firmly. "That night was not about romance, and anyone who tries to paint it as anything else is misunderstanding the truth." But Sandra knew the world would not accept that answer easily. They would stretch it, twist it, and manipulate it until it resembled whatever narrative they wanted. Keanu looked at her again, seeing her distress. He lowered his voice, leaning in. "Do you want me to tell them the real reason we disappeared?" Her breath caught. Her eyes widened. Her hands trembled. Because the real reason was something she had never spoken about to anyone other than Keanu. Sandra whispered back, her voice barely audible, "I don't know if I can survive that." Keanu shook his head gently, his eyes soft with understanding. "We don't have to tell them everything, we just have to tell them enough to stop them from guessing." But before they could decide what enough meant, the giant screen behind them suddenly flickered. The audience gasped. Keanu and Sandra turned quickly. The black screen turned into a loading icon. The technicians in the back panicked. The director shouted, "That's not us, someone is hacking the system." And then the screen lit up again. A second clip. A clip neither of them had ever seen. A clip from the night they disappeared. Sandra's heart dropped instantly. Keanu's breath froze in his chest. The screen showed the two of them years ago, sitting together on a bench outside a hotel at midnight. The camera angle was far away, grainy, but their shapes were recognizable. Sandra had her face buried in her hands while Keanu sat beside her, holding her shoulders gently, speaking to her with urgency and concern. The audience inhaled sharply. Sandra whispered, horrified, "No, how did they get this? No one was there, no one." Keanu's voice hardened. "Someone followed us, someone was recording." The clip zoomed in, showing a clearer angle. Sandra's face was visible, wet with tears. Keanu looked exhausted and scared, rubbing his forehead with one hand while holding her with the other. The audio was faint, but some of their words could be heard. Younger Sandra, "I can't handle this, it hurts too much, why did it have to be like this?" Younger Keanu, "You're not alone, I'm right here, I promise I won't leave you tonight." The audience gasped louder. Sandra felt heat crawling up her neck, not from shame, but from the shock of her most vulnerable moment being dragged into the public. The clip continued. Younger Keanu said a line that hit the theater like a thunderclap. "I swear on everything, Sandra, whatever happens next, we'll carry it together. We won't let this break us." Sandra's knees buckled again. Keanu grabbed her waist, holding her steady. But the clip wasn't done. Younger Keanu added one more line. A line the world had never heard before. A line that changed everything. And if the truth ever comes out, I'll be the one who takes the blame. The audience erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters yelled questions. Sandra put both hands over her face, tears spilling uncontrollably. She felt exposed, fragile, ripped open in front of thousands. Keanu tightened his hold on her, whispering urgently, "Stay with me. Don't let them take this moment away from us." But the audience was already shouting. What truth? What was he protecting? What were you hiding? What happened that night? Who were you trying to protect? Sandra couldn't breathe. Keanu stepped in front of her, shielding her from the crowd, his eyes burning with protective intensity. The director rushed up the steps toward them. "We need to cut the feed. We need to get you both backstage now." But before they could move, the screen glitched again. Another video began loading. Different file name, different timestamp, and unlike the other clips, this one was labeled "The Real Truth, MP4. Sandra whispered in terror, "Whoever is doing this, they're not done. They want to destroy us." Keanu stared at the screen, his heart pounding. The file began to open. The audience went silent again. Sandra clutched Keanu's jacket, her voice shaking violently. "Keanu, if that video shows what I think it shows, everything will change. Everything." Keanu wrapped both arms around her, refusing to let her fall again. And as the new clip began playing, revealing the first blurred frame, Keanu whispered the last words before the truth exploded. "Whatever happens next, I won't let you face it alone. The truth the world was never meant to see." The screen behind them flickered with a cold, unstable light as the file called "The Real Truth, MP4" began to load. Even before the image became clear, the atmosphere inside the theater changed entirely. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was tension, a deep electric tension that wrapped around everyone in the room. Every face in the audience leaned forward. Every camera lifted higher. Every whisper died in the air. All they could see on the screen was a blurred shape in dim lighting, but everyone understood instinctively that this clip was different from the others. This clip held something heavier, something dangerous, something personal in a way the rest had not been. Sandra felt Keanu's arms tighten around her as if he were trying to shield her from the memory itself. Her heart pounded painfully against her chest. She couldn't breathe evenly. She could barely even stand, and only Keanu's firm hold kept her upright. The moment the file name appeared, she knew exactly which night this clip belonged to. She had never spoken about that night, not to her friends, not to her family, not in interviews. The only person who knew the full truth was Keanu, because he had lived it with her. The screen sharpened. A dimly lit backstage corridor came into view. Sandra gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "No, they can't show this, not this night." Keanu looked at her with steady, gentle eyes. "I've got you. Whatever it shows, I'm here." The clip zoomed in slowly, showing younger Sandra pacing in that corridor, her face pale and filled with fear. She kept running her hands through her hair, her breath sharp and uneven, her shoulders trembling with the weight of some emotional collapse. Younger Keanu entered the frame seconds later, rushing toward her with alarm in his eyes. He grabbed her shoulders gently, trying to calm her as she resisted the touch, shaking her head violently, whispering no over and over. The audience reacted instantly. Gasps rippled through the room. Whispers spread like wildfire. People looked at the screen with a mix of confusion, empathy, and shock. Sandra couldn't hold back anymore. Her tears spilled freely. She buried her face against Keanu's chest, trembling uncontrollably. Why is this happening? Why would someone show this? That moment wasn't for anyone, not for the world. Keanu held the microphone in one hand and held her with the other, trying to speak, but his voice wouldn't come out yet. His own eyes were glossy, the memory clearly affecting him too. The theater lights felt unbearably harsh, shining down on their vulnerability as if the entire world was entitled to it. The clip continued. Younger Sandra's voice, shaky, broken, played through the speakers. "I can't go out there. I'm not strong enough. Why does everything hurt so much? Why did they say that? I thought I could handle it, but I can't." Younger Keanu cupped her face gently, his own voice thick with emotion. "You don't have to handle it alone. Listen to me. Whatever they said, whatever they did, you are not alone tonight. I'm here, I'm with you. You don't have to pretend you're okay." The audience fell silent again. Some people covered their mouths. Others wiped tears from their eyes. One of the reporters whispered, just loud enough to be heard, "How did none of us know about this? She was suffering like that." The clip zoomed in further. Younger Sandra collapsed to the floor, breaking into sobs so raw and painful that even the recording could not soften it. Younger Keanu dropped down immediately, pulling her into his arms, holding her so tightly it looked as though he was trying to prevent her heart from breaking. Younger Keanu whispered, "I won't let you fall apart alone. If we get through this night, it will be together, I swear." The younger version of Sandra looked up at him with devastated eyes. Younger Sandra whispered, "Promise you won't leave me tonight." Younger Keanu nodded. "I promise, whatever happens after this moment, we face it as one." The audience gasped again. Some people started to cry. Others murmured things like, "That was real pain. She was going through something serious. Why did no one help her? And why did they hide this?" Sandra grabbed Keanu's shirt tighter, shaking. "They don't understand. They don't know what led to that moment or what happened after." Keanu whispered into her hair, "I know, and that's what matters." But the clip wasn't done, because the most painful part of that night was still coming. The younger Sandra on the screen took a deep breath, wiped her tears, and whispered something that sent an emotional earthquake through the audience. "I lost someone that night, and no one even knew. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know how to breathe, and the whole world wanted me to smile like nothing happened." The audience gasped loudly. Phones dropped. People froze. Sandra's sob escaped her lips. She clung to Keanu harder, hiding her face, unable to watch herself grieving something so devastating. Keanu's expression hardened, not at her but at the world for seeing this. He looked out at the crowd with a heavy, protective sadness. He took a breath, about to speak. But the clip kept going. Younger Sandra whispered, "You were the only person I could call. The only one who came. The only one who didn't ask for explanations. You just stayed. Even when I pushed you away, you stayed." Younger Keanu brushed her hair away from her face gently. "That's what people do when they care. They stay. They don't leave when things get dark." The theater was completely silent. Not a single sound. Not a single breath. The truth now hung in the air. Sandra had suffered a deep personal loss that night, something the world never knew. And Keanu had been the one who held her together when she didn't even know how to stand. But then the clip revealed something even more shocking. Younger Sandra whispered through tears, "I feel guilty. I shouldn't have asked you to come. The world keeps talking about us, making things up, and now this, and I'm dragging you into my pain again." Younger Keanu shook his head instantly. "Don't ever say that. If the world doesn't understand, that's their failure, not yours." Younger Sandra asked quietly, "Do you ever regret staying by my side?" And younger Keanu answered with a line that hit the audience like lightning. "Never. The only thing I regret is that I couldn't protect you sooner." Keanu closed his eyes tightly on stage, feeling the weight of his own words from years ago crashing back into him. Sandra sobbed into his chest, whispering, "Please make it stop, please." He wrapped his arm fully around her, hoping to shield her from the memory. But the clip still wasn't done, because the final moment was the moment that changed both of their lives forever. On the screen, younger Keanu wiped Sandra's tears and whispered, "We don't have to explain this to anyone. Let's leave for tonight. Just disappear for a few hours, somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. And tomorrow we'll pretend this never happened." Younger Sandra nodded weakly. Younger Keanu helped her stand. They walked away together, disappearing into the darkness of the corridor. The screen faded to black. The clip ended. The theater erupted into chaotic noise. Gasps, whispers, shouts, flashes, everything collided at once. Questions shot from every direction. Who did she lose? Why did no one know? Why did he protect her so deeply? Were they hiding a secret relationship? Why did they disappear? Sandra stumbled, and Keanu held her firmly, grounding her. The director rushed forward, shouting to cut the lights, cut the screen, cut everything. But no one listened. The crowd was too loud, too emotional, too shaken. Reporters pointed microphones at them. Actors whispered to each other with guilt and regret. Some audience members looked heartbroken. realizing they had never seen the pain behind Sandra's smile all those years. Keanu raised his hand, trying to speak. But before he could, a woman from the front row stood up suddenly. Her voice pierced the noise with cold clarity. "Sandra, you weren't the only one who suffered that night. Tell them whose fault it was." Everyone froze. Sandra lifted her tearful eyes slowly. And when she saw who the woman was, her entire body went still. Her breath stopped. Her fingers turned cold. Keanu's arm tightened protectively, sensing danger. Because standing there, staring directly at them, was a person from Sandra's past. A person who knew the truth. A person who had been there the night everything fell apart. And she said one final line that shattered the room. "Tell them the truth, Sandra. Tell them who you were really protecting that night." The theater erupted again. Sandra's heart dropped. Keanu felt her collapse against him. And the spotlight burned brighter as the biggest truth of all prepared to break open the truth that healed the silence. The moment Sandra recognized the woman standing in the front row, a wave of memories crashed through her so violently that her breath vanished from her chest. It was as if time itself had folded, bringing the past and present into the same painful room. Her fingers tightened around Keanu's sleeve, trembling uncontrollably, and she whispered his name in a fragile voice. "Keanu, it's her." Keanu turned his head slightly, following Sandra's gaze. The moment he saw the woman, his expression changed too. He recognized her. He had been there the night everything fell apart, and he knew exactly why this woman's presence now was more dangerous than any leaked clip. The woman stepped forward slowly, her heels tapping against the silent floor. Her face was filled with a mixture of guilt, anger, sorrow, and something unresolved that had lived inside her for years. She didn't raise her voice, didn't shout like the man before her. She spoke quietly, but the quietness was sharp enough to cut the room open. "Sandra," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "you weren't the only one who broke that night, but you took the blame for all of us, and you shouldn't have." The audience erupted in whispers again. Everyone looked from the woman to Sandra to Keanu, trying to understand the connection. Keanu stepped slightly in front of Sandra, instinctively shielding her from the emotional storm. His voice remained calm, but there was unmistakable protectiveness in it. "This is not the time to make accusations. She's already been through enough tonight." The woman shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm not here to accuse her, Keanu. I'm here because I can't let her carry the weight anymore. Not tonight. Not after seeing what the world just watched." Sandra swallowed hard, struggling to gather enough strength to speak. Her voice came out paper-thin. "Why are you here now? After all these years, why now?" The woman's eyes softened, and sadness spread across her expression. "Because I thought staying silent protected you, but now I see that my silence hurt you more than any truth ever could." The audience leaned closer, hungry for answers, empathy mixing with curiosity. The director tried to gesture for the woman to sit down, but she ignored him completely. Her attention was locked only on Sandra. "Tell them," the woman said gently, "tell them who you were protecting that night. Tell them the truth so you can finally breathe again." Sandra felt her chest tighten painfully. Her tears fell without control now, sliding down her cheeks as her body trembled with the weight she had held for so long. Keanu squeezed her hand, grounding her. "You don't have to say anything you're not ready for." But Sandra shook her head slowly. "I think I've been carrying this alone for too long. I think I need to let it go." Keanu stepped closer, still ready to catch her if she fell. "I'm here, you don't have to do this alone." She nodded, taking a deep breath that quivered like someone learning how to breathe after years underwater. The entire theater went silent. Sandra wiped her face with shaking fingers and lifted the microphone. Her voice was soft, fragile, but filled with truth. "The night we disappeared, the night you just saw, it wasn't about Keanu and me. It wasn't about a relationship. It wasn't about a scandal. It was about loss. A loss I never spoke about because it hurt too deeply and because I wanted to protect someone who didn't deserve the blame." The woman in the front row looked down, tears dripping onto her hands. Sandra continued, "That night, she lost her brother, and I was the one who was with him in his final moments." The audience gasped. Keanu closed his eyes, remembering everything. Sandra's voice cracked. He was like family to me. We all loved him, but the world didn't know about our connection, and when he passed suddenly, she thought I failed him. She said things out of grief, out of pain, and I broke under the weight of it. I broke because I loved him too. The woman began crying openly now, burying her face in her hands. Sandra's tears flowed, but she kept speaking with the strength of someone who had finally reached the edge of silence. I didn't want the world to know what happened because I didn't want to add more pain to her life. I didn't want her to become the center of rumors or blame or judgment. So I carried it alone. I pretended to be fine on the outside while everything inside me shattered. Keanu looked at her with gentle admiration, his hand tightening around hers. The audience was silent, completely silent. Not a phone beeped, not a voice whispered. This wasn't gossip anymore, it wasn't scandal, this was grief, real human grief. The woman stepped forward again, wiping her eyes. I blamed her for something she had no control over. I was angry because I was hurting, and she took that anger because she cared more about me than about protecting her own image. She shouldn't have. I should have spoken years ago. Sandra looked at her with forgiveness in her eyes. Not forced forgiveness, but the kind that forms when pain and understanding finally meet. You were grieving, Sandra whispered. I understood, I still do. The woman nodded, unable to speak. Keanu finally stepped forward, lifting the microphone, his voice deep with emotion that had lived inside him for years. That night wasn't about shame. It wasn't about hiding anything wrong. It was about two people grieving someone they loved. And Sandra, she held herself together for everyone else. She carried the world's expectations while her heart was breaking. He turned towards Sandra gently. You were never alone that night, and you're not alone now. Sandra looked at him with a grateful, broken, healing expression. The audience felt it, felt the raw humanity, the connection, the kindness, the honesty. This was not scandal. This was life. Painful, beautiful, complicated life. Sandra breathed deeply, her voice trembling as she spoke her final truth. We didn't disappear to hide a relationship. We disappeared because I couldn't breathe and Keanu helped me remember how. He stayed with me the entire night. He didn't leave. He didn't ask for anything. He just stayed. And that is why we kept the promise, not to hide love, but to protect grief. Keanu lowered his head respectfully as the weight of her words filled the theater. The audience reacted slowly at first, soft murmurs, emotional sighs, gentle nods, until suddenly a single person stood and began clapping softly. Another followed, then another, and another, until the entire theater rose to their feet in a standing ovation that wasn't for fame, wasn't for performance, but for truth, for courage, for vulnerability. Sandra cried harder, overwhelmed. Keanu held her close, his arm wrapped around her shoulders as the applause washed over them like a wave of healing she never expected to feel. The woman in the front row covered her mouth, crying as she clapped too. And for the first time in years, Sandra felt her heart lighten. Not because the pain had disappeared, but because she finally let it breathe in the open air, no longer trapped inside her. After minutes of applause, the director walked up with soft steps. Take your time, he whispered. Tonight is yours. Sandra looked at Keanu, and he looked back with warm, steady eyes. We're okay, he whispered gently. Finally, we're okay. She nodded, and for the first time since the night they vanished together, she truly believed it. As the lights dimmed and the crowd continued applauding, Keanu leaned closer to her, speaking softly so only she could hear. You were never weak, you were grieving, and I'm proud of you. Sandra closed her eyes and let the moment settle into her soul. The world had learned the hidden truth. And instead of breaking her, it set her free.